The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy of Military Sciences was buzzing. Hundreds of cadets scaled, furred, feathered. You name it were settling in for what promised to be a rather dry lesson. Historical weaponry of primitive civilizations. At the front, Professor Varnix, a towering insectoid with gleaming compound eyes, was about to begin. Greetings. Cadets, Varnix's voice clicked and echoed. Today, we delve into the quaint world of projectile weapons and archaic and frankly inefficient method of warfare used by pre-spacefaring cultures. A few chuckles rippled through the audience. Of course, they were inefficient. Who would use a weapon that just throws bits of metal when you have plasma cannons? And gravitic disruptors? They were relics, toys from a barbaric past. Well, almost everyone thought so. In the third row, a solitary human, Cadet James Walker, was quietly polishing a long, sleek object in a polymer case. He was part of the Terran exchange program, and so far, he'd been the quiet one. Most assumed he was just shy, maybe even a little embarrassed to be from a backwater planet like Earth, which was still a newcomer to the galactic stage. Professor Varnix gestured to a hologram of a clunky, ancient rifle. Behold, these crude devices relied on chemical combustion to propel tiny metal slugs. Their accuracy was laughable, their range pathetic, and their lethality, well, negligible by modern standards. Can you imagine actually fighting with these? The laughter grew louder. A Vornian cadet, covered in brilliant green scales, raised a clawed hand. Professor, is it true that some species had to manually reload these things? Indeed. Varnix chittered. A slow, clumsy process requiring significant physical dexterity and, I imagine, a great deal of patience. Now the whole class was laughing. The idea was just absurd. Walker let out a quiet sigh. He gently set his case on the table in front of him. Permission to demonstrate, Professor, he asked, his voice cutting through the laughter. Silence fell. Every eye, compound or otherwise, turned to him. Varnix's antennae twitched in surprise. Demonstrate? Cadet Walker, you possess one of these artifacts? Yes, sir, Walker replied. A modern reproduction, of course. For educational purposes. The professor hesitated for a moment, a wave of caution washing over him. It is rendered safe, I trust. A faint smile touched Walker's lips. It's perfectly safe, sir, until I decide to make it unsafe. He clicked open the case. Inside, nestled in custom foam, lay a rifle. It wasn't the crude junker from the hologram. This was a piece of precision engineering, matte black and radiating a sense of cold purpose. It looked sleek, efficient, and undeniably dangerous. Murmurs of surprise and a little bit of fear rippled through the room. Some cadets leaned forward, intrigued. Others unconsciously shifted their chairs back. Walker lifted the rifle with a familiar, practiced ease that spoke of countless hours of training. This, he announced, his voice steady, is an M408-6 sniper rifle. Its bolt action and fires a 7.6 to by 51mm NATO cartridge. Its effective range is over a kilometer. And its accuracy? It can place a round within a 5cm grouping at that distance. A furry Zolith cadet in the front row scoffed loudly. 1 kilometer. Our standard tissue plasma rifles can vaporize a target from 5 times that distance. Walker nodded calmly. That's true, but let me ask you a question. How loud is your plasma rifle when it fires? The Zolith blinked, confused. It's loud, glorious, even. A thunderclap of power. Why would you want to hide it? Because sometimes, Walker said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, victory isn't about being the loudest. It's about being invisible. He picked up a single, gleaming brass cartridge. With a series of sharp, metallic clicks that echoed in the silent hall, he chambered the round and closed the bolt. Every single alien in the room was mesmerized, their eyes fixed on the tiny object that was now ready to unleash its power. This, Walker said, holding up a similar cartridge between 2 fingers, is just a piece of metal filled with powder. There's no energy cell to charge, no gravitic field to align. It doesn't care about vacuums or being underwater or even a planet's chaotic magnetic storms. It doesn't rely on fancy, temperamental tech. It just relies on physics. He turned his attention to the target drone at the far end of the hall, a standard piece of equipment for weapon demonstrations. "Professor, may I?" Varnox, his scholarly curiosity overriding his caution, gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Proceed, Cadet." The entire hall held its collective breath. Walker let out a slow exhale, his body becoming a statue. His movements were fluid, mechanical, and utterly deliberate. He brought the rifle to his shoulder, sighted through the scope, and in a matter of seconds, his mind calculated the distance, the almost non-existent wind in the hall, and the room's artificial gravity. Then a crack. The sound was an explosion. It wasn't a hum or a hiss of energy. It was a physical punch to the air that made every single being in the room flinch instinctively. Less than a heartbeat later, a perfect, clean hole appeared dead center in the target drone. The class was frozen in stunned silence. There was no bright flare of plasma, no warping of space, no energy discharge. Just a single, impossibly fast piece of metal, delivered with devastating and absolute precision. Walker lowered the rifle, his movements just as smooth as before. He worked the bolt, and the spent cartridge ejected with a sharp ting, arcing through the air before landing on the floor. "Projectile weapons don't need to be flashy," he said, his voice returning to its normal volume. "They just need to work. Every single time, anywhere you take them." Professor Varnox slowly walked towards the target drone, his multifaceted eyes wide with disbelief. He scanned the entry point. There's no energy residue. The penetration is complete. The amount of kinetic force delivered by something of this size, it's astonishing. A scaled cadet near the back whispered to his neighbor, his voice laced with a newfound dread. "Does that mean a single human soldier could eliminate one of us without us ever seeing them or even hearing the shot until it was too late?" Walker's expression remained calm, but his eyes held a cold, hard glint. "That's the idea," he confirmed. "Humans got very, very good at this long before we ever dreamed of reaching for the stars." For a long, heavy moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the hall's ventilation system. The laughter, the arrogance, the smug superiority from minutes before had completely evaporated. In its place was a deep, unsettling, and undeniable respect. Finally, Professor Varnox broke the silence. "Perhaps," he said, looking from the rifle to Walker, "perhaps the term primitive is not the correct one to use." Walker allowed himself a small, faint smile as he carefully locked the rifle back in its case. "On Earth, Professor, we have a saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it." As the human cadet walked out of the lecture hall, his footsteps echoed like distant gunfire, leaving a room full of the galaxy's finest young warriors in stunned silence. From that day forward, the Galactic Academy of Military Sciences quietly added a brand new, mandatory module to its core curriculum, Terran ballistics and applied kinetics. Because as every cadet now knew, technology and tactics may evolve, but a well-placed bullet never goes out of style. Thanks for watching, everyone. It's amazing how a different perspective can change everything, isn't it? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into fascinating sci-fi tales. See you in the next one.